So, Jason, we have seen a recent development in the world of quantum computing that we wanted to report on pretty quickly because we feel like it's pretty important. You agree?
I do agree. Whenever we see these papers about, hey, RSA 2048 and quantum in the same sentence, people get nervous because, we might at some point be looking at a quick deprecation of RSA, but that's not what we're looking at here.
Yeah, but nonetheless important. So the paper, which was published on February 12, 2026, so very recently as of time of publication of this episode, I'm going to read the title. The Pinnacle Architecture, reducing the cost of breaking RSA 2048 to 100,000 physical qubits using quantum LDPC codes. And this is authored by about 8 people, all of whom are from the company Iceberg Quantum in Sydney, Australia. Now, 100,000 physical qubits, Jason, that's not the number people normally throw around, and I think that's probably the takeaway here, right?
That is the huge takeaway because, the last time we were talking about this, Tim, we were talking about an author.
Million, right?
More than that, it was actually 20 million.
20 million. Okay.
Yeah, Gidney's work back in 2019 is kind of was the gold standard, but we've now seen, and they call out RSA 2048 specifically, and they claim that it can potentially be factored with fewer than 100,000 physical qubits. Now, keep in mind, that is a colossal change from the past. It's it's an order of magnitude in difference. But I think what's most important to note, Tim, is the methodology in which they're doing this. And I'd like to actually go through some of that with you. And by the way, that quote you just said of QLDPC, I'm going to explain what that is. It is quantum low density parity check, and I'm going to explain exactly what that means.
Okay, go ahead.
So the first question is, anytime you look at a paper like this, you have to ask, is this real? Is this just fluff, that got published and is trying to scare people? Because we've seen those before.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, Tim, I think this is very theoretically rigorous. The issue is that it's quite engineering heavy in terms of actually building a quantum computer that can do this. So the math is solid. Quantum low density parity checks codes are actually fairly well established in terms of the ability to have a lower density and a lower count of qubits overall. And I'm going to explain exactly what this low density thing means and why it's important. But I think that people have to understand that even though the math is solid, the actual wiring of this, if you will, the connectivity, these surface codes that are used, basically to build a chip. We saw the margarine chip, right? We saw the willow chip.
Yep.
These were nowhere near 100,000 qubits. So 100,000 qubits is still a very hard computer to build.
Sure.
And not only is it just 100,000 qubits, it's instead of 20 million just seems like in the stratosphere, but 100,000 qubits is still a lot. I mean, a lot compared to where we are today. The problem is that the wiring of the computer, and I'm not going to get into the engineering of it, but just to say that the feasibility of a computer like this, I think it is feasible, and it shows the type of computer you're going to want to have to build in the future to get down to a reasonable number of qubits. But it still would be a pretty serious engineering challenge that we're simply not there yet.
Right. So it's not like there's risk of this happening imminently. And I think that's an important point, Jason. But at the same time, if we feel like this theory here is solid and defensible, to cut down the number of necessary qubits, that amount, and get into the realm where you can imagine a road to delivering that based on current knowledge, that's incredibly important.
It is.
Right.
And Tim, so Tim, I'm going to give you two more things. One is I'm going to talk about this in as intuitive of a way as possible. You know how I always love to fall on my face with overly simplified analogies. And think about this, Tim. Let's say every qubit, you think about like a pane of glass.
Okay.
You know, something that's very fragile,
Okay.
that you have to ship. Let's say that today's method, what we would call surface codes rather than quantum low density parity check codes.
Okay.
Surface codes, which is what was used by Gidney back in 2019 to get to that number of 20 million qubits. Imagine if you had, let's say, 100 crystal shards of glass that you wanted to ship to a friend. Mm-hmm. With surface codes, that would be like wrapping each individual glass in a gigantic box filled with 100 layers of bubble wrap.
Okay.
Okay. And so if you had to fit all of that into one UPS truck, you might not be able to.
Okay.
Right? That's the idea. It's just, it's extremely, it's too much to pack into one quantum computer, let's say. The QLDPC method, which is sometimes, you might consider to be almost like a holographic method in terms of the way that it's done. What's important to note here is that you're actually shipping all of the panes of glass in one box, but each pane of glass would be interconnected by, let's say, a web of supporting springs. And so they're kind of almost wired together in a way.
Okay.
And if you happen to drop the box, which is entirely possible in the world of, a quantum computer, you could have interference that somehow sweeps through and causes problems with stability. Well, the thing is, the way that each of the shards are wired together, they don't all know about each other. In other words, each glass isn't able to know each other's information, but that some glasses do talk to other glasses. In other words, the ability to repair and recreate the damage of dropping the box is still possible through this wiring. It kind of smears quantum data across the system so that you get some level of safety with a lot less physical qubits, Tim. I don't know how helpful that was, but that's my explanation.
So when you say smearing it across multiple qubits, it's a little analogous to having a backup. Is that right?
Yeah, and it's an efficient backup in the sense that not every qubit needs to know everything about every other qubit. Every qubit talks to some other qubits, and therefore it's able to overall be very efficient in the way that it smears the information across the entire quantum field.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Tim, I got one more thing just because this is cool.
Okay.
In the paper, they did finally talk about how long it might take for this pinnacle system with 100,000 qubits to actually break, or I should say factor, RSA 2048.
Okay. And?
So, assuming a error rate of 10 to the minus 3, and a certain kind of cycle time, not to get into the engineering, they estimate that factoring with this theoretical computer could break RSA 2048 in roughly 1 month using 98,000 physical qubits. And that's how they came up with this 100,000 qubits number.
Okay. Got it.
In other words, 1 month.
1 month. Which,
however,
as we've discussed, there's lots of secrets that wouldn't be worth that. But for the right secret, or for the right 12 secrets that you could get over the course of the next year, that could be very damaging to the people who hold those secrets, and it could be worth it for an assailant. Or an attack.
Exactly, Tim. And I only have one more thing to say, which is they did in the paper talk about what it would take to get to a 1 day breaking of RSA 2048.
Okay, what's that?
And that would be 471 physical qubits. So I find that so fascinating because most of the time we've never heard anybody speculate on how long it would take. And now we actually have some people, saying those things, which should tell you something about, just how far we are in the game now.
And I grant that 471,000 physical qubits is obviously a lot more than 98,000 physical qubits.
Colossal.
But it's still obviously an awful lot less than 20 million physical qubits.
So what it tells you is that, if you ever start hearing about 100,000 qubit quantum computers using this kind of a method, then, it's going to take a month, which means the bad guy's only going to go after specialized information. It means that things like, think about lifespans of certificates. Important to think about that now, like 1 month certificates or less might even help you in the first wave of quantum computers that are cryptographically relevant, right?
How interesting. Certainly not. I doubt that was why we settled on the time we settled on, but isn't that convenient?
I think it's extremely convenient with 47-day, i.e. 30-day certs.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So let's follow this if anything comes out of it, because this is very interesting and important. And, if this gets, and so you feel like there has been, as of recording time, there has been 5 days since the publication of this. Is the community agreeing that this is valid? Is this being validated by observers?
Not only that, but this company that you mentioned at the top of the, Sydney, they just got a round of funding to help to start build this. So
that's
money
validation.
Is talking. Money is talking.
So we need to keep our eye on this. I think this is an important development, and at the macro level, this echoes, some of the speculation that you and I have made, which is, again, that these things, like, we've never, we don't really find in the march of technology. It's very rare to find that we underperform against our solid, sober expert estimates for progress, and usually the opposite, because people are coming up with innovations like this one that change the rules and make it more advantageous for the technological progress than it was when we did those estimates. And I think we've seen this again.
Quantum low density parity checks, nothing new. That thinking has been around for a while in terms of how to wire together qubits in a way that to make them non-fragile, if you will. But this paper specifically called out RSA 2048, and that to me is what makes this interesting. So you might see specialized quantum computers for the purposes of quantum relevance. So the only thing I'm going to add on top of all this goodness, Tim, is you and I were in Ottawa just recently, and we've recorded an episode that we're going to publish very soon on AI being used to reverse engineer the solution to a private key for the P256 curve for elliptic curve cryptography.
Right.
I think, Tim, we should put out that episode sooner than later, because it's peanut butter and jelly with the one we just did today.
Okay, so look for that episode soon. We're going to break this one basically as soon as we can into the channel. We're going to break it in from the normal cadence because it is timely. And then we'll probably queue jump that other one about the ECC attack and get both of those out pretty soon. Sounds good?
Got it, Tim. Got it.
All right, thank you, Jay.
Thanks, Tim.